Everybody, and welcome to our first module for the ELD Standards Framework Coffee Chats. We're excited to have you here today. We hope you had the chance to go through the first module on the WEDA site to get introduced to the WEDA ELD Standards Framework. And we are excited today to have the amazing Lanny Simpson to share with us throughout all these modules. Lanny, thank you for all your hard work putting these modules together and for helping us to understand more about the ELD standards. And I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Ivana. As Ivana said, my name is Lanny Simpson, and I am the EL Director for Burke County Public Schools. We are in the western end of the state. And the impetus for these coffee chats came from a conversation that I had with my lead teacher, Sandy Zhang, and we were lamenting that we could never seem to find time to get together to do our modules for the WEDA Standards Framework e-learning course together. And so I talked to Ivana and DPI about the fact that EL jobs are often isolating. Usually you're the only EL teacher in the building. Sometimes you have 3 and 4 schools. And so we felt like the idea of a virtual coffee chat would be great to be able to process the modules with some other human beings who work in the field of English language development. So here we are, and this one is our first Module 1 coffee chat. And basically, we're going to start with our current background knowledge of the WEDA standards, of English learner teaching pedagogy in general. And we're going to take a look at our own background knowledge that we bring to the table right now. And then we're going to do a bird's eye view of the new WEDA standards. And this is basically just to dip our toes into the water of the new standards framework because it is pretty large. And Susan, if you'll share with us some Webex Logistics.
Sure. I think by now everybody has probably seen this slide in DPI's Webex trainings. So you are welcome to change the layout to the format that you would like. And this just talks a little bit about how you do that. We do have it right now so that you cannot put your video on only because it just saves on the bandwidth. And sorry about that. We'd love to see all of your beautiful faces, but right now we have to figure out a way to present as best we can. I would like to point out that you use the chat box. You should see the chat option on your lower right-hand corner of your screen, depending on how you have it laid out. And please use the chat box to talk to everyone rather than the Q&A. I assume you guys did a sound check. If you're having any audio issues, please let us know. Otherwise, Lanny, I'm turning it right back over to you.
Okie dokie.
Thank you.
Get out of the chat. Okay. And Ivana, I need you to launch our poll. What I'd like for us to do is see who our audience is and consider the differing perspectives that each of us brings to the table today. So are you an EL teacher, a content teacher, a principal or an AP, an instructional coach, or something else? Do I need to submit? Can you click on anything? Okay.
I'm seeing some poll results come in.
Okay.
Hopefully everyone can see it.
Actually submit. And Ivana, I'm unable to see the poll results.
All right, I'll be glad to share them once we get the poll closed.
Okay.
Looks like 54 out of 61 have completed the poll. So how much longer would you like to give it? And I'm seeing some comments popping up too for the others.
Okay. Why don't we go ahead?
All right, closing the poll, and now we should be able to show the poll results. Hope attendees can see it. What I am seeing is that 30 out of 61 participants are ESL teachers, 11 out of the 61 are instructional coaches, and 9 chose other. And I saw that there were a number of comments coming in for the other. And I can close out of the poll and go to comments if you want, or if you can see them.
Okay. I see that we have a federal programs director. I see that we have an ESL teacher. Her submit button was not working. Longtime ESL teacher, here. We're grateful for you.
And hopefully the poll has stopped showing for the participants.
Okay. So the majority of our audience are EL teachers, which is what we were thinking we would have. And so when we did our pre-work and we watched Module 1 of the WIDA Standards e-learning course, there were 4 educators who were introduced to us in that course. And so let's just take a walk down memory lane and remember our 4 educators. We had Jack, who is our EL teacher, and he wants to reflect on language uses that are the most important for his students to practice. So he was very practical. Then we have Nicole. You'll see our gal in the green box. She is our ELD specialist or instructional coach. We have some of those folks today, and you'll identify with Nicole. She wants to focus on bridging language and content during instructional planning with teachers, something that I know that you focus on as well in your jobs as instructional coaches. For those principal folks we have here, you probably identified with Claudia. Claudia is our administrator who has a wonderful goal of shifting the mindset of her staff to an asset-based philosophy. And then finally, on our far right in the red rectangle, we have Amy, who is our parent educator, and she wanted to forge partnerships with families and communities to advocate for our English learners and our multilingual learners. Sounds like something a parent educator should do. So I want you to reflect as to who you most identify with and think about the chores or the jobs or goals that each of these educators have when they are beginning to learn about the new WIDA standards and how that might fit your role. And so the basis for WIDA's new standards are 4 big ideas of what they call it. And so if you look in the light blue box, equity of opportunity and access. And so WIDA really wants to provide common and visible language expectations for teachers and administrators to be able to create opportunity and access for their English learners. So put those key words in your head: common and visible language expectations. The second big idea that WIDA brings to the table is integration of content and language. And so the new ELD framework makes those two concepts of content and language integrated. It's like two sides of a coin. You can't have one without the other. And so content serves as a vehicle or means for learning language, and language serves as the means for learning content. And this is particularly highlighted in our new standards. Next, our third big idea is collaboration among stakeholders. WIDA was very explicit in that they want systems to move away from the idea of the ELD teacher being the one with sole responsibility for developing language of English language learners. WIDA believes that it takes a village, and we all know in our practice that it certainly does. And this is very important to bring to the table. And finally, the fourth big idea, which is probably a little bit new to you, is the functional approach to language development. We focus on the purpose of language, not so much the structure. So let's unpack that notion of the functional approach to language development. And so the functional approach to language development really plays a huge role in the new WIDA standards. And WIDA uses the metaphor of a toolbox to think about language. And the toolbox is filled with linguistic tools, and each tool achieves a different purpose in communication. So we always want to ask ourselves, what is the purpose of my students' communication? It helps us to understand the functional approach to language. I've given you some examples in the blue text boxes that you see on the slide. It always starts with a verb, and there is an object of that verb usually. Identifying main idea and details, stating my opinion, sharing a sequence of steps. So what I'd like for you to do is to type in the chat box an example of a language tool, or the purpose of language. Okay, so give me some more examples of the functional notion of language, say in a content area. I've used examples from English language arts. What might a language function be in another content area? Oh, I like it, Courtney. Compare, contrast. Absolutely. Compare, contrast, cause and effect. Argue. The language of analyze, justify, describe an object or character. Retell, inform, persuasive writing, explain, give an opinion, summarize. Language of agree and disagree, narrative writing. Yeah, you guys are all providing verbs that explain how language accomplishes a purpose in the setting of schooling in K-12. Absolutely. Explain the difference in cells. Karen, I love that example, nested in the content area of biology. Exactly. So you guys already have a great idea of how language works to achieve certain purposes in the setting of schooling. So let's circle back to our 4 big ideas. And what I would like for you to do is to stop and reflect for a minute. And in your current job and in your current setting, not necessarily having to do with the new WIDA standards, but in your current job right now and in your teaching and interaction with families right now, how do you create equity of opportunity and access for your English learners? How do you integrate content in language, in your planning, in your co-teaching? How do you collaborate among stakeholders with your English learner parents and families and greater community? And then what are you doing with the functional approach to language development? How are you incorporating it in your lessons? And I want us to think about this in terms of what we call glows and grows. So if you have a glow, it means that I think I'm doing pretty good right now in this big idea area. And if you have a growth area, it's like, okay, I want to get better at this. So we have a Jamboard, and I am going to copy the link address and put it in the chat box. And I'd like for you to click on it and go to the Jamboard. And since we have so many people, we have a lot of frames in our Jamboard. And if you'll just wait just a second, I'll give you some instructions on how to use the Jamboard if you've never used the Jamboard before. I'd like for you to think about the 4 areas, the 4 big ideas: equity, integration of content and language, collaboration, and functional approach of language. And what I'd like for you to do is think about if you are doing a great job in that area or if you need to grow in that area. So you'll see on the left-hand side, there's some tools. I want you to click on the sticky note when it's your turn, and you will type a glow in. So for equity, I may be creating sentence frames for my L's to access their ELA lesson. When I finish typing, the blue button comes alive and I can click save, and it's going to put that Post-it note up on the Jamboard. If I click off of it, then it goes away. So because we have so many people scheduled, and we had 131 sign up. I'm not sure how many we've got right now.
We've got about half of that, but a bunch of us are getting errors that say there are too many people viewing the site and it won't let us into the document.
Oh no.
Yeah, I'm getting it, and I've gotten some comments that others are getting it as well.
Okay. Okay. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to reflect on your own and write on a piece of scratch paper or a Post-it note, or I tell you what, and we'll type it in the chat box, because if we can't get into the Jamboard, I think that our best next bet is to go to the chat box. So let me get back to my presentation. Yes.
Actually, if you're on the Jamboard, you could type in some of the things that are coming through the chat box if you wanted to.
Well, I think we might be better if we just go back to the chat box, but
Okay.
let me go back to my screen.
You look beautiful in that picture, by the way.
We cleaned up pretty good. Okay, I need to get back to my presentation. Hang on.
But it does look like a few people have
Well,
gotten
it
in.
does look like there's some people.
Yeah, one of the participants said it limits to 50 viewers at a time.
Okay.
So maybe type your comments and then get out, and those that weren't able to get in, just try again.
Okay. And I will tell you that there are 4 frames that have the same question depending on your last name, with what it starts with, because we were thinking we were going to have 131 of you guys. But when the slide changes color, then you'll know it's a different question. And so you'll see here, then you can type your glow or your grow on how well you're doing with integrating content in language. And you can just scroll through. If you can't get into the Jamboard, then you can put it in the chat box. There we go. Okay. I'm going to put some of these that I see on sticky notes that came in through the chat box. Okay. And we will share the finished product. We can send the link back out. Okay. And Maria, it is the WIDA ELD Standards Framework course in the Secure portal. And I'm trying to copy as many as I can. Here's a good one: collaboration within the school improvement team, the SIT team. I'm going to page to collaboration and add that. Okay. Get another glow in here. Okay. Do we need more time? Could I have someone respond in the chat so we'll know if we need more time to type? Maybe a couple more minutes, okay? And if you finish typing, I want you to peruse some other folks' Post-it notes, and I'm going to make some of these larger. You can pull out, and you can drag these. And I'll make some of these larger so they're a little more readable. Let's pull this one down. And if you'll read your colleagues' responses, and I'm going to ask a few people to unmute, and you'll have to tell me which frame it's on. So let's make this one bigger. Okay. So many good responses.
And Lainey, just let me know who you want me to unmute. I think I have to unmute them.
Okay. Are we ready? Okay. Let's.
Who would you like me to unmute, Lanny?
Okay. Ivana, if you'll unmute Sandy Zhang. And Sandy, tell us which big idea.
I am.
Okay, you're unmuted, Sandy.
Okay, I might be echoing, so mute me.
She'll
Just
just
try
talk
talking
off
and
of
it's- we
mine.
can all, yeah, we can all mute ours. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm no longer in there so that somebody else can go in after I finish typing, but I'm on the collaboration with among stakeholders. And just I see a lot of calling more people to in the shared process So getting more people involved in the community, your school, your principal, your the teachers involved, and also as the parents, um, so that they can all have a stakehold in their L's success in language learning.
Thank you, Sandy. Okay, let's head to integration of content and language. And Ivana, if you will unmute Deidria, and Deidria, if you would share with us some of the responses under integrate content and language that resonated with you.
I think a
You're
big one
unmuted,
for me
Deidria.
would be the pre-teaching of vocabulary. I think that is one of the reasons that in 5th grade, our students tend to do better because classroom teachers also spend so much more time explicitly teaching vocabulary for that particular subject matter. And so I think using that idea to get content teachers to do that for all areas, and in addition to just the content vocabulary, also tier 2 vocabulary.
Awesome. Thank you. And I like this one as a sheltered specialist. My team helps content folks look at their standards from the language lens. Sheltered specialist, would you like to unmute and share a little bit more about your post, your glow?
What was it again?
I'm asking the person who is the sheltered specialist.
To raise their hand.
Can you raise your hand? That's okay. She says, my team helps content folks look at their standards from the language lens, functions of language that need to be explicitly taught. So for example, the language of argue. So you guys are already well on the way to teaching from the lens of the functional approach of language. Super. And you've integrated content and language standards. Nice. Okay.
Message. If you wanted to unmute Karen Alston, I can unmute her. She's a sheltered specialist in Wake.
Okay.
She has been volunteered.
Karen, did you write that one?
You're unmuted, Karen. If you're talking, Karen.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I was not the person who shared that, so it had to be someone else on our team. Basically, we work with content people to look at their standards, and we talk with them about the functions of language and how do you explicitly teach those language skills that you want people to display.
Nice. Thank you. Okay. So let's take a look at our third big idea. Well, we've done collaboration among stakeholders. Let's go to that last big idea, the functional approach to language. And can we have a volunteer who would like to share with us? Crystal, can you share with us, Crystal Perry?
You're unmuted, Crystal.
Okay. Well, I didn't fill anything out for this board. I didn't get to it. But I think probably personally, I would probably go under this grow. I feel like I need to have inspect a little bit more functions and features a bit further.
Thank you, Crystal. And let's take a look at this post. Decoding and comprehension cannot be used in isolation. Students can decode well, but do not comprehend. So that is an area of focus in instruction and how we support those students by building language to aid in comprehension is really important. And that is a piece of the new science of reading. And so I would highly recommend that if you haven't had a chance yet to study the science of reading, that you do so. That's a great approach to helping students build comprehension through language in addition to decoding. Okay, let's head back to our presentation. Thank you for your patience as we jammed and learned that we can't have more than 50 participants on a Jamboard. Okay. Let's move to take a peek at the framework graphic. And if you'll take just a moment to drink this in, it provides a bird's eye view of how the components are nested in the standards framework. Now let's do some unpacking, and we're going to begin with the broadest piece of the framework, the 5 standards. And the interesting thing is the 5 standards for WIDA are unchanged. And so the social and instructional language, that's of course setting classroom norms, procedures, routines, the language that you use for that, the language of schooling in general, the language of discussion, peer interactions. Can you clarify? So it's a very broad standard that crosses all content areas. It's completely unchanged. And what WIDA wants us to take away from Module 1 is that the social and instructional standard is not a precursor to learning language for the content areas. So the language required for success in the content areas remains the same. And so these, I teach my folks that these are very broad standards, and sometimes it's difficult to know exactly what to teach. And so what WIDA has done is introduced a lot more specificity in the language standards framework that will help us know a little better on exactly what to teach. And let's see how WIDA does this. WIDA's second component of the framework are the 4 key language uses. You can see from the graphic we have on the screen what they are. I had to develop a mnemonic to help me remember what the new key uses are, and I use NIA, narrate, inform, explain, and argue. And so that just helps me to put it in my memory bank. You might want to think about an acronym to help you remember these key uses. And so what I want us to do is to chat some more about how you would connect these overarching key language uses to content areas. So for example, what content areas do you associate narrate with? How about inform, explain, and argue. So I'd like for you to type in the chat box the key language use that you're thinking of. So you might put narrate and then type beside it, what content area do you often see this key language use of narrate? So if you'll type that in the chat box, you might want to type types of text or genre families that you see these key uses in. And what WEDA did was they surveyed standards across states. They surveyed mathematical practices, science practices. They surveyed genres of literature that are used in K-12. It was a huge job. And when they sifted through it, these were the most prevalent or most prominent key language uses. Karen says explain, science, lots of people explain, math, argue, social studies. Excellent, narrate, ELA, social studies, narrate, ELA, exactly. And so reading a story or writing a story, fiction, biographies, memoirs under narrate, exactly. And so what you see is that these key language uses cross many content areas. They also have some that are very typical, such as we typically expect to see narrate in English language arts, but as you plan a unit, you will realize that key language uses are nested sometimes in your units. And so, for example, if your students are explaining to a partner how a lever works, they may be informing by comparing and contrasting two types of levers, like a teeter-totter and a wheelbarrow. And then they might switch to narrate and tell a story about their experience on the teeter-totter at the playground. So as we realize these key language uses can be nested within a unit, you also always want to think about what is the most prominent key language use as you plan a unit. And often, and I'll give you a hint, and we'll get into this more in later modules, oftentimes the summative assessment will give you a good idea of where the focus is with that key language use. Excellent. For argue, our L's are creating a petition to eliminate styrofoam in our cafeteria. Wonderful application of the key language use of narrate. Love it. Thank you. Okay. And so in addition to the key language uses, nested under the key language uses are language expectations. These are new to the ELD standards. And if you notice, they look like typical content area standards. And so you'll see the notations. And if you start with me over on the left-hand side, you'll see that this is English language development. The standard is language arts. 2-3 denotes the grade level cluster. And then a key language use of narrate is identified. And then the mode of communication, which in this example is expressive. And then you get a STEM. Multilingual learners construct language narratives that. And these round bullets are your language functions. Notice that they're verbs with an object. Orient audience, develop story, engage audience. And so the language functions are important not only for EL teachers, but also for content area teachers. This makes a good point of entry for the content teachers. So let's stop for a minute and think about that it says that the mode of communication is expressive. What is the expressive domain? Would someone like to unmute who has done the module and learned what WIDA is now calling the expressive mode of communication?
You have an answer in chat from a couple of different people. Would you like to pick one?
Okay. So Isabella Peeler she's, I know, willing to share with us.
Right, she's unmuted.
What's the expressive domain, Isabella?
The expressive domain is the speaking and writing. So any
Ah.
activities where you're having the students do speaking or writing about an experience, that's what it's referring to.
Thank you. And can we also unmute Tamara? Tamara, would you like to add to Isabella's explanation of expressive?
He is unmuted. Tamara, I think you're unmuted. Let me try it again. Okay, you there, Tamara? If you're speaking, we still cannot hear you.
Okay. So Tamara says she's trying to talk. Okay, Tamara, and I'll share what you have added. Representing is another productive or expressive area that WIDA has added to speaking and writing. And so sketch notes, Google Drawings, infographics, creating videos, creating maps, charades, gestures are all expressive forms of communication. So WIDA has really widened the definition of productive language. And I think it's great for our English learners because it gives them additional avenues in which to produce language. So thank you guys for that. And we're going to move to the last area of, okay. I can get I'm in the chat box. Sometimes, there we go. Okay. So the last level of, or the last component, if you will, of the framework are called the proficiency level descriptors. And this is just a graphic that conceptualizes the proficiency level descriptors. And so what you'll see here is WIDA has taken the 3 dimensions of language, the word phrase, the sentence dimension, and the discourse dimension, and they've looked at what a sample of language might look like for each of these proficiency levels within the word phrase level, the sentence level, and the discourse level. For you folks who are veterans, would you type into the chat box what discourse refers to in our English language development standards, just in everyday language? What is discourse? Can you type it in the chat box? Text complexity. Thank you, Tamara. Okay, absolutely. Academic discussion. Thank you, Stacy. Discourse is language longer than a sentence. Absolutely. Thank you, Phil. Very specific. Good deal. Okay. So let's take a look at what the proficiency level descriptors look like for a grade band. And if you'll notice, The bottom row refers to word or phrase level, and this is for grade band 2 through 3. So they're descriptions of what sample language would look like at the word level for proficiency levels 1 through 6. WIDA also uses the sentence level. And then if you'll notice, there are 3 rows for the discourse level. And up at the top, we have the organization of language, the cohesion of language. Susan says how language is organized. Absolutely. And tell us, if you will type in the chat box, this discourse row refers to the density of language. Would someone like to either unmute and share or type in the chat box, what is the density of language? What is the density of discourse? Phil Malatin says the number of content-specific words per 100 words. Sandy, how rich is their writing? Exactly. It's just the amount of information carrying language that is packed in to the discourse. Absolutely. So if that's something you're unfamiliar with, you might want to make a note of that if you downloaded the WIDA standards framework. And then we're going to zoom into a particular row. We're going to look at the organization of language. And I just want you to notice how it increases in complexity across the proficiency levels. So you'll see at level 1, we might have short sentences, and then look at the step up for level 2, multiple related simple sentences. Level 3, you begin to meet a purpose in a series of extended sentences. So what might be helpful for you is to highlight these descriptors that are significant across the proficiency levels. It helps you to keep that in your mind and to understand how language grows. And so really what we want to think about is, how are we going to get the word out about the new ELD standards framework? How will we collaborate with other teachers, with district administrators, students and family, PD developers? How will we do that? And so what I'd like for you to do is we've got a Padlet, and this is our last activity. And I'm going to try to move this. Okay. Oh, oops. Let me go back. Sandy, I need to get to that link to the Padlet. And I'm trying to move that. Oop. This little screen is obscuring my view. There we go. All right. Let me, whoops. I'm going to copy the Padlet link. And I'm going to enter it in the chat box. Okay. And so what I want you to do is think about your sphere of influence. What can I do to make the ELD standards framework more visible? How can I bring awareness to these different groups? Content teachers, other ESL teachers, administrators, families. Be creative, be bold. How can you advocate to these various stakeholders? If you'll click on the plus sign and type in your response to what you would do to help share about the new WIDA standards framework to these different stakeholders. Okay. Nice. Susan Buckholtz, can I have you unmute and share some of these ideas for collaboration to share the new ELD standards framework? That's a mouthful.
I have lost my screen with people's names. Who am I unmuting?
Susan Buckholtz.
Thank you. It disappeared. There we go, Susan. Susan, are you able to talk? It shows unmuted on my screen, but I can try muting and unmuting again. Give me 1 second. I've muted, and now I've unmuted. I'm not hearing her.
Okay. And whoever responded to this and wrote, all of our PD this year is centered around key language uses. We're language detectives searching for clues.
I see that Tamara has her hand up. I don't know if she's the one who said it.
Tamara, can you? Yeah, I thought that might
Let's
be
try
you.
again. I've unmuted you again, Tamara. Still not hearing anything. Oh, I'm sorry.
I love that. It's wonderful. Key language uses, clues, very clever. I love this. Share with students in goal setting to improve their ELD. That is something that we introduced last year, was goal setting with our students. So hooray for whoever wrote that one. Invite that district and school administrator to participate in the Secure Portal ELD sessions. Nice. Share during grade level PLCs and relate them to the grade level plans. I love that. If you wrote that, would you be willing to unmute?
You can type in the chat or put your hand up. Tamara's hand is still up, but I think it didn't go down. That might have been her too, though. Oh, that hand went away real fast.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing any new comments or new hands.
Our district has PL days where we're inviting teachers and instructional assistants to join us as we delve into the resources for supporting ELs. Nice. Ooh, look at this one. Organize a shared drive by area detailed in the ELD standards. Provide with practical examples for new teachers. Nice.
And share those with us at the state.
Ooh, using talking points. That's something we use in our district to communicate with parents who speak other languages. Pushing out phone calls, conferences, sharing in the car line. I love it. We've made WIDA 2020 a focus for our EL teachers this year, so we'll be collaboratively digging in and working together as we plan for effective instruction. Great. Okay. I think we have done a good job of coming up with some ideas. And I am trying to grab this and move it. So I can get back to my original screen. Thank you, Sandy. There we go. And then we're gonna, last slide. Okay. And we appreciate your joining in. I hope that technology will work better next time. We're going to do breakout rooms next time, in addition to some other interactive activities. Don't forget to watch Module 2 in the e-learning WIDA Standards, a Collaborative Approach course. And I want you to check out your school or your district mission statement for next time, and we will use that in an activity. There was a question about what the difference is between the 2020 standards and the, I'm assuming the 2012 standards, which were the last ones published. And I'll just tell you briefly that we've moved away from model performance indicators. We are no longer using those, and we've moved to language expectations. What you saw that looks a lot like Reg Ed content standards that are organized by language functions. Are there any questions? I know we're a couple minutes over.
And I was just going to jump in, Lanny, and say that we at the state are working on documents. This is our installation stage where we are preparing this PD. We're also preparing other documents that will help to answer those questions. There are some things on the WIDA site as well, but we're looking forward to within the next year giving you guys some great documents from North Carolina to help us as we get ready to go into the implementation of the ELD standards, the new version in 2022-23. So thank you, Lanny, so much. You're getting lots of thanks.
Oh, good. And I'm so glad that you could come. I promise next time we will get to do breakout rooms, and hopefully it'll be a little more fun and the technology will be a little more cooperative. And remember, this is just dipping our toes in the water with Module 1. We will really dig in beginning with our next session.
We really appreciate you guys being there. This has been recorded and we will share it on the website. Give us a week or so to get that set up. And we look forward to seeing everyone next week. Thank you so much. You are getting some additional questions. Okay, so yeah, I'll go ahead and answer that. So the question is that you see NCELD standards, and is this a synonymous term with the 2020 WIDA standards? Yes, the 2020 WIDA standards were adopted by the North Carolina State Board of Education as our ELD standard course of study for North Carolina. So you will hear us moving away from talking about WIDA. You'll hear us more and more saying the North Carolina ELD standards, because sometimes people don't seem to realize that WIDA was adopted and is considered the North Carolina ELD standards. So yes, great question. And we're all, I think, still working kind of on our terminology, because we've talked about the WIDA standards for years. And I think it's a really powerful move for us to be able to really identify these are our North Carolina standards. They've been adopted and they are from WIDA. So thank you. CEUs for the webinar. I'm trying to remember, yes, but I'm trying to remember how we have that set up. So we will have the attendance records based on the system, and the attendance records are downloaded, and we will give you the exact details on CEUs next time, because I don't remember. So good question. What else?
The next chat is October 11th.
So great. And you should receive, I'm glad you said that. Do you have another slide that has the reminder to, if they didn't check all when you registered, if you did not check the box that says, the box that gave you the checks for all 6 sessions, and you only registered for one, then you won't be registered for the others. So feel free to go back in, make sure that you checked the box at the top that registers you for all of them. Most people did that, but I've noticed that some people registered for the first one, but then didn't register for all. So do make sure you're registered. You will get reminders from the system with the links.
And Ivana sent in an email the steps to sign up for the e-learning module on WIDA. That's the pre-work. So we probably need to send that out again. And I would highly suggest, if you have the ability to print the new WIDA standards, that you do so. It's what, 240 pages. So it is a lot of ink and paper, unless your district happens to be buying the spiral bound version of the standards for you.
And I will say, if you want to give me the screen or if you would like to go to the website yourself, we can walk them through how to find those instructions. Since we're still recording, we understand if people need to leave, but this way it will be in the recording for those who watch it. So I can take the screen if you want.
Okay. All right. I'm going to stop sharing.
Great. So I just put in the chat the bit.ly link to our website, and it's giving me share file. Oh, I'm not presenter. You've got to give me presenter too. Sorry, guys. Participants might be able to steal it. Yes. Okay. I am now the presenter. I can now share the screen. All right. So in the chat box is the bit.ly link for our website, NCL's website with NCEL capital and W capital. You should be able to see my screen, I hope. When you get to the website, if you go to professional learning, and I could just give you the direct link, but it's better to be able to find it. When you scroll down, you find the information for WIDA workshops. And then when you scroll down on the WIDA workshops, you will see instructions at the bottom of the page here. It says, do you have a WIDA account? If you currently have a WIDA account, it tells you how to go into the secure portal. If you do not currently have a WIDA account, which many of our content area teachers will not, then you will be asking the testing coordinator to give you access to that account. So I hope that helps. And that way we have that on the recording. Anything else, Lanny?
There was a question. Can you clarify the difference between inform and explain? And inform is simply presenting information. Explaining is how or why a process or a phenomenon works.
Any other questions before we officially stop the recorder and wrap up for tonight? Thank you guys for being here, and thank you, Lanny.
You're welcome.
And I neglected to introduce myself at the first, so if you don't know who I am, it's Ivana Manthor Anderson, one of the ESL Title III consultants. Susan spoke with us earlier today, and Zatley Stocks has also been on the line, and Marshall Foster, I didn't see, but Marshall is our fourth in this wonderful team we have here at DPI, and I do believe that our section chief, Stacy Daniel, has been online with us today as well, so thank you for all the support from NCDPI.
And there